as I haven't been able to get face-to-face with Sam Miller from SBG Nutrition, I decided I'd try a podcast this time round. So I hope you enjoy listening to the chat that we had. I spoke to Jordan Coe in Malaysia when he was on the Z1 Royal Cup there, and he was speaking quite extensively about the nutrition and how you helped him out with that, Sam.
That's right, yeah.
So, well, really, can you kind of give me a bit of a rundown on your background and how you've got to where you are now?
Okay, yeah, that's fine. So I kind of stumbled into nutrition completely by accident. I went to university at Oxford Brookes to study audio technology. Graduated in 2012. Basically, no idea what I wanted to do because I wasn't really interested in the degree. But I finished it anyway, and then I went into recruitment I did about 6 months. Came out of that, was, sort of floating around, really not having any real direction. So that's when I got speaking to my mum, who obviously owns Sumalee Boxing Gym in Phuket, saying, why don't you come out, do a few months, maybe sort of think about where you want to be, and then go from there. So I ended up doing a pretty short strength and conditioning qualification at Bath University. It was only about a week long, but it gave me a bit of an idea of what kind of things I was enjoying. I always enjoyed weight training, strength training, and it just sort of seemed a bit of a natural direction to go, because you think, what do you actually enjoy doing? Let's have a go at that. So anyway, when I eventually got to Thai, and this was in about 2013, I had just sort of discovered, the kind of the power of nutrition and how a good diet can affect your training and things like that. I just started following a few people, on Facebook and what have you, who were sort of preaching that message as well. And I came across a guy called Ben Coomber, who runs a company called Body Type Nutrition, and they are all sort of about. He was putting out a lot of free information. Actually, he did a podcast, a weekly podcast, and I was just completely hooked on it. And just finding out all this information, then playing around with my own food and doing this and seeing the effects it can have. And they do a 1 year online qualification, which at the end, you can be insured as a well, in inverted commas, nutritionist, because that's, to actually be a nutritionist, you have to do the full degree and what have you, which is what I'm doing now. But yeah, did that, and then that's when I started speaking to the fighters at Sumalee, Jordan and Craig Dixon and Martin Avery, and just speaking about how they were sort of struggling to make weight for fights, and it was just becoming a real chore, and their kind of performance was suffering. So that's when I sort of decided to sort of start looking towards the sports nutrition side of things. And then that's when I started working with Jordan a bit more closely. I came back for the summer of 2014, carried on completing the Body Type Nutrition qualification, and then in November of last year went out, and that's when I started working with Jordan, sort of one-on-one, and was helping him with his nutrition on that front. And now my visa ran out, so I'm back in the UK, and I took the plunge and decided to go back to university at 27 to study nutrition full time. And that's where I am today. Really, just finished my first semester, and it's going pretty well so far.
And you've been getting great results with Jordan. I mean, he's found a massive difference.
Jordan, I couldn't have asked for more from him. He did exactly what I said, and he was just always asking questions. And obviously, he was skeptical at first because it was just so alien to him, all the things that we were doing. We were put on such a tight schedule when we first started working together. He said he had to drop about 9 kilos in, I think it was like 4 weeks. And everything that I did with him, I'd never done with anyone, not with myself, not with anybody else. So it was many, many sleepless nights in those 4 weeks, I tell you, because I was just dreading him getting on the scales and being heavier than he started or something like that, But luckily there was some coaches from the Body Type Nutrition team who sort of specialise in martial arts and kickboxing and things like that. So I had them to turn to for help. And luckily, it worked out, and he came in on weight and lost that weight in pretty dramatic fashion. But he's been really good to work with.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So other than making weight short term for fights as well, obviously we've got sort of the long term body composition, all this kind of stuff as well.
That's right.
The big thing that I guess most people initially go to when they look at nutrition, most people are looking for fat loss, aren't they?
That's right. Yeah.
So what's your approach to that, and what's your thinking on that?
I mean, to be honest, that's probably my bread and butter at the moment. Is that kind of element, rather than the fighters wanting to make weight for their fights. That's kind of like quite a small part of what I do. For 90% of people, it's going to be based upon a habit-based changing habits in their daily routines, looking at their diets, because it's pretty much useless. And let's say you wanted to lose a few kilos before a holiday or whatever like that. If I just went and gave you a meal plan, it's not gonna teach you anything, because you're gonna do it, you're gonna follow it. Within a couple of months, you're gonna be bored, and then you're not gonna know where to turn, and you're not gonna know how to adjust your diet, and it's just gonna be, you're gonna end up going back to old habits and the way you were. So what? Like I said, it depends on the person, but most people, it's going to be setting them weekly or bi-weekly targets, where when they've got that habit nailed and I can see an improvement in that, then it's going to be onto just multi-layering that and just building up over time. So maybe over the course of 3 to 6 months, you've just sort of rewired their kind of daily habits. You've taught them about what foods are going to make them feel good, what foods are going to help them perform, and what foods are going to sort of be detrimental towards their goals. So yeah, I mean that's the kind of approach that I take on that front. It's easy just to give someone, or even just like macronutrient targets to hit, but like I said, that's not going to teach them anything in the long run.
Yes, yeah. I must admit, I'm not a nutritionist at all, but obviously I do get to deal with people and trying to fuel what they're doing, and
sure,
fat loss is a lot of what comes up as well. And I've come across people that do want basically just tell me what to eat, meal plans. And I've done that once for somebody, and it worked, but only while they were on the meal plan. As soon as they stopped, bang, straight back. It's all gone horribly wrong.
That's it. And I think that especially with Muay Thai fighters, they want results yesterday. So the amount of times I've had people sort of get in contact by email. Hi mate, I've seen what you did with Jordan Co. I've got to lose 9 kilos. My weigh-in's Friday. Can you help? No. It's just not possible, is it? I mean, no. And it's just such a quick fix, and it's not, like I said, for Thai fighters, you have to be a lot more on point with your nutrition. So for them, I'm not so worried about giving them targets to hit, because they do have to be a bit more on point with everything.
Yes.
For 90% of the population, it is going to be, are you hitting your protein targets every day? Are you getting enough to keep you satiated throughout the day? Are you getting enough fat in to support hormonal health? Have you got enough carbs in to fuel your gym training or whatever training you might be doing? And it is just such little simple things. People, you spend, when I was first getting into it, I spent hours on the internet reading just conflicting arguments and advice, and you're thinking, where the hell do I turn?
Yeah.
But it's just like 10 to 15 simple things you can do that will just make a world of difference.
Yes. So you talk about their sort of fueling for training and all the rest of it, and protein. Yeah. Obviously, fat loss is one part of it, but then for people worried about performance, then there's like the maintaining strength or improving strength, and actually recovery between training sessions, all that kind of stuff. What sort of approach do you have for that? What are your ideas?
So for athletes or people that are looking to get maximal performance, like I said, you want to be hitting protein targets each day, which generally is going to be, for the exercising population, it can vary between probably 2 to 3 grams per kilo of body weight. Now that's going to 2 grams per kilo of body weight is going to be enough to support your recovery. If it's spaced out throughout the day, you're going to be continually stimulating muscle protein synthesis, which is going to be helping muscles to recover, etc. So when it comes to the higher end of maybe 3 grams per kilo of body weight, that's just going to be based on personal preference. Like for me, I've been trying to put on muscle recently. I started out at about 2 grams per kilo, and then worked my fat and carbs around that. But I was just getting hungry throughout the day. But it's much closer to about 3 grams at the moment.
Right.
I'm not getting those hunger pangs or those cravings like I was before.
Right.
So after you set the protein targets, you're going to want to look at fat, and minimum you want to be going about 0.8 grams per kilo of body weight, and that's just to support sort of basic hormonal health. Fat is vital in skin, nail, and hair health.
Right.
It is a fuel source at the end of the day as well. You do need fat. And once you set that, then it's time to play around with your carbs. And like I said, if you're looking to sort of maintain weight or just look at maximizing your performance, once you've set those two, then you can sort of play around with the carbs. And maybe you'd start around, let's just say for someone who's about 75 to 80 kilos, maybe start on about 200 grams a day, and then monitor your weight each week. And let's say if it's going up, then you might bring the carbs down, and just play around with it like that. But at the end of the day, if you're looking just to fuel your workouts, most people are going to do well on placing most of those carbs around the training window.
Yes.
And if you're focusing your meals on sort of protein, fat, and maybe some veg and a few carbs throughout the day, that's going to keep your blood sugar nice and stable. So you won't get this sort of hunger pangs or energy dips like you see it like what a lot of people do.
Yes.
And then if you're having the bulk of your carbs sort of post training, you're going to be refueling glycogen stores and also helping to kickstart that recovery.
Yes. You talk about kind of playing it a bit by ear and tweaking for the individual. How do you stand on things like metabolic typing and blood type nutrition and diets and that kind of thing?
Well, metabolic typing, that was kind of what this body type nutrition was based upon.
Oh, okay, right.
So we learned about it's like somata typing. Is that what you mean? So
yes.
You got your mesomorphs, endomorphs, and ectomorphs.
Yeah, and just how people actually process the different macronutrients, whether they're kind of a bit more better able to handle protein than they are carbohydrates and all this kind of stuff. Yeah,
I think from what I've found in my own personal experience, like I don't know how much sort of scientific evidence there is to really support it, but just anecdotally, I found that to be very true. You get your sort of your long and lean people, quite tall, kind of maybe struggle to put on weight a little bit. They can generally handle their carbs a hell of a lot better than, say, for someone like me. I do quite well on a protein and fat heavy diet.
Right.
And I sort of have to strategically place my carbs, like I said, around training or somewhere where it's not going to be a problem throughout the most of the day. So I think that is it is kind of valid, but like I said, I'm not sure about the scientific evidence to support that.
Yeah.
Mesomorphs, like you sort of athletic people, the people that we just love to hate. They're just sort of like the perfect body, like chiseled all the time. They can generally they do well on a mix of, protein, fat and carbs around 30 to 35% each. So yeah, I think that is a valid way of sort of at least starting out as a starting point, because everyone is different, and then you literally just use that as a starting point, and then you can adjust it as necessary from the results you get from that.
Yeah. I personally found, when I was cutting weight for a fight, so depleting all the glycogen stores, so carbohydrates were low. Once I came back onto the carbohydrates, I could feel how bad they made me feel.
Right, yeah.
And that was when I got interested in more about what my mix should be personally for me, because I could really make myself feel quite almost hungover with carbohydrates.
Like sluggish.
Yeah. And just all headaches and stomach just felt all mixed up, just like I've been on the beers,
Really, yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah,
I think because typical Western diet is very, very carb heavy, and then once you start to sort of play around with other sort of fuel sources, like maybe using a lot more fat in your diet, you do realise, like, oh god, that typical mid-afternoon dip that I know for sure a lot of people get. It's going to be from a carb-heavy lunch, where you get a big rush of blood sugar, and then halfway through the afternoon, the blood sugar dips, and you're reaching for the coffee or whatever, the Red Bull. So I think, like I said, you see like the kind of guy who doesn't respond particularly well to carbs at every meal. So maybe like you would do better with placing them around your training, like, you know, I think you said you did.
Yes, yeah, definitely. You mentioned Red Bull there. That's tweaked another little bit in my mind here, because Red Bull before fights is something I see quite a few fighters doing. I mean, I personally don't really recommend that with the fighters I've worked with. What's your opinion on it, though?
I don't recommend it to anyone.
No.
Because I mean, the only buzz they're going to, or the only additional benefit they're going to get from it is the caffeine.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the people that I've worked with in the past, they would have. I don't know if you ever heard of M150. It's quite
yes.
in Thailand, but for them it's more of like a ritual. And the last thing you want to be doing is messing with a fighter or an athlete's ritual in the lead up to their fight, because it's something they've always done. And if they think it's going to, you know, it's part of their routine, then it's best just to leave it be. Caffeine obviously has performance benefits, but if let's say you're hammering back Red Bull or coffee before your training throughout the week, those performance benefits are going to dip because you become desensitized to it.
Yes.
It's one of those things where if you have someone that's wanting to experiment, then you could maybe get them off the caffeine for a month, 6 weeks, and then you can slowly reintroduce doses of it strategically, maybe before training or before a fight.
Yeah.
Just so they can actually get that performance boost rather than it just being kind of out of habit.
Yes. Yeah. But the so caffeine being something that will help you. What about, you know, obviously there's sugars in the Red Bull before a fight?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously the sugars, they're just simple sugars. Generally, if they've done it properly, they're not going to be eating within a few hours before their fight anyway, just so they can let the food digest properly. So if you've got that hit of simple sugars, like you were just saying, that spike in blood sugar, if they come crashing down in the third round,
yeah,
and it's gonna take the edge off their performance, isn't it?
Yes, I mean that's always been my opinion of it. That the caffeine I'm not so worried about.
No,
but it's the simple sugars and the energy crash if they get the timing all wrong.
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
You've got about a window of about sort of 40 minutes where it starts to kick in afterwards, but then it runs out, doesn't it? And if you don't fight when you're expecting to, or the fight goes on longer, it's
yeah. They're not out in the third round, then you're screwed.
Yeah. But talking about making weight for fights as well.
Yeah.
I mean, traditionally you see a lot of fighters in the sauna suits doing all the skipping and all this kind of stuff to make weight, and I've very much gone down the route of water loading and trying to not use as much energy as possible physically and just saving all that. It sounded like that's what you do with Jordan as well. I'm interested to hear how you work that one.
Yeah, Jordan, that's how it came about, really, this whole sort of what I've been trying to do for the last sort of year and a half.
Yeah.
Is his performance was just really, really suffering. He was having to make these, because he was about 18, he's still growing, so he's becoming harder and harder for him to hit that 57 kilo target, you know.
Yes.
And you know, he said himself, this used to be easy, why is it so hard? And he he hates sauna suits, hates the sauna. That was his thing. Like, he really, really hates the sauna.
Yeah.
He'd having to get up at 5 a.m. with a sweatsuit on to lose 3 or 4 kilos in a day. I mean, it's not healthy, whatever way you look at it, but there's safer ways to do it than doing it in a sweat bag, you know. So I think the way I do it is pretty anal, because I like to have been working with the whoever it might be for a number of months. Usually that's what I prefer. I don't like taking someone on 4 weeks out, and I shouldn't have done that with Jordan, and I think I got pretty lucky actually helping him hit the target. But because I like to know what calories they're on, what kind of macro split they're on. Let's say, so they said earlier about them having their protein targets and their and carb targets. So by the time they come to about a week out from their fight, I know their training schedule leading up to the weigh-in.
Yeah.
So from there, I can tell them that they need to start water loading, basically. Let's say, I don't know, 7 days out. Let's say 7 days out, they start to increase their water from maybe 3 or 4 liters a day by 1 litre every day.
Yeah.
And then after, about 3 or 4 days out, they cut water off, and they keep reducing it until you get to almost nothing on the day of the weigh-in.
Yes.
Because that you know how it works. So basically, as you increase the amount you drink, you pee more, and then as you when you cut that off, it takes a while for your body to realise that you've stopped taking water on. So you keep peeing out water and keep peeing out. And then, so we also at that point, you're also going to want to try and deplete the muscles of glycogen.
Yeah.
So that, for every gram of glycogen, or let's say stored carbohydrates in your muscles, it also holds on to 3 grams of water. So if you're still training quite intensely, at that point, let's say a week out, we start to reduce your carbs gradually each day, because you want to find that balance. So that gets, rather than cutting that out straight away for a week out, we just decrease it like bit by bit until the day of the weigh-in, is going to be pretty low, almost to zero, depending on how much they've had to lose. Because for that instance with Jordan, it was a lot to lose, so we had to literally use all the weapons in the armory.
Yeah.
So you're reducing the carbs bit by bit, and then so it comes to the weigh-in day, you're still peeing out the water. You've depleted your body of glycogen, along with that the water that it's held.
Mm-hmm.
But during that time, obviously, you want to be keeping, because your body, it needs protein and etc. just to sort of to stay alive, to function. But what most people don't realise is that of those, let's say you're on 2,000 calories a day, of those calories, probably 60 to 75% just goes on keeping you alive.
Right.
So your basal metabolic rate is what, the turnover of nutrients for your body.
Yeah.
So you still need to be giving your body enough for it to recover and just survive and just keep you ticking over, basically. So I generally keep their protein pretty high, well, around the same as what they would have been on before.
Yes.
And I like to keep the calories give or take the same. So as I'm reducing the carbs, I'll push their fat up slightly. Mm-hmm. So maybe they're getting some more, like, there's a lot of omelets in that week, because you need to be keeping the fat nice and high, and you don't want to drop the calories too low, just because you want to, for their performance, you want to keep them sort of ticking over as well as possible.
Yes. Yeah.
And in that time, as I also get them to kind of do a sodium load, so I get them to season their food up until the point where they cut off their water. So when their water cuts off, I also get them to stop using salt. The only kind of spices they'll use is like black pepper or something, because as you've increased that salt intake, your body's fighting to expel it, and along with all that sodium comes the water that it holds onto.
Yes.
So that's what you're losing a bit more weight through that. And then we will also get them to use. I get them to drink these horrible drinks, which they absolutely hate. Just use a juicer, and it'll be like broccoli, lots of greens, just to keep their low calorie stuff, to keep their vitamins high, a bit of fiber in there as well. And there'll be stuff like fresh ginger or ginger root, dandelion root, all these natural diuretics that's going to help them pee out more, basically, just to expel more water. So in a roundabout way, when you add all that up, it adds up to quite a bit of weight loss. So by the time they get to to the day, obviously, you're keeping track of it as you go through the process every day, and just hope there's no scares. Or as soon as you get to the weigh-in day, and then you obviously go on to the recovery side of it after they've weighed in. How
do you go about that? Have you got a structure for that?
Yeah, so like the key point obviously is refueling your muscles and restoring your glycogen pretty much as soon as possible to get your weight back up. What I tend to do is basically usually in Thailand it's going to be a day before weigh-in.
Yeah.
Obviously there are exceptions, but for most things that's how we like it, because it gives you a chance to rest and recover and pretty much just get back to get fighting fit, really, to use a cliche. So what we do is kind of super compensate with carb intake. And directly after they weigh in, I chuck them a litre bottle, which is pretty much 50% sponsor, or let's say Lucozade Sport.
Right.
Because you've got your simple sugars in there. There's also electrolytes. So 50% of that litre is going to be that, and then the rest will be just water. I get them to drink half of that straight away, and then to sip on the rest of it over the course of an hour. Now, as much as most of them want to dive straight into the buffet, I get them to hold off until they start to pee clear. So obviously, after dehydrating yourself, your pee is going to be like dark yellow.
Yeah.
So I wait for them to become hydrated again, because when you become dehydrated, your body down-regulates these enzymes that help with digestion.
Right.
So you might smash all that food back, but you're not going to be digesting it properly, and not taking on the nutrients, etc. So so I get them to wait. They hate me for that, but I get them to wait, and then then like I said, we super compensate. So I try and give them as much of a structured meal plan as possible. I use roughly 10 to 12 grams of carbs per pound of body weight,
right,
to get in, which obviously ends up being quite a lot. So you're looking at a hell of a lot of carbs for most people, which is why we try and get it in with the simple sugars. So like for starters, with the Gatorade, you include all the sugary drinks, so the Gatorade or the sponsor or whatever it is. And then we're looking at splitting the protein evenly throughout the meals throughout the rest of the day, using lots of rice. Just favorite one for me is just chicken, rice and honey, just all fried up.
Right.
Just literally getting them back into that, get them comatose into a carb coma, and look to sort of to make sure that they're fueled up. We try and keep fiber to a minimum,
Right.
because you don't want any kind of GI distress in the run up to the fight, and that's especially true on the day of the fight. Literally, obviously, having no vegetables sounds a bit, you want them to be getting the nutrients and vitamins or whatever, but if you're not having that fiber, you're not having the risk of the GI distress. There's nothing worse than probably getting into a ring and you've got that rumbling in your stomach. You want your digestive pathway to be pretty clear by the time you get into the ring.
Yeah.
So that's how we do it leading into the fight, and hopefully by that point they're sort of they're feeling a bit more like themselves.
Yes. I noticed there as you're talking that there's not a lot of mention of supplements and that kind of thing. So you keep things very natural.
Supplements for me, they're just a waste of money.
Yeah.
Unless you're like at elite level where you can afford to spend X amount of money on whatever it might be, then you're not going to get the benefits from it, because a lot, if you're fighting in Thailand or wherever, let's just, as you know, the prize money isn't a lot.
No.
So they're on a budget as it is, and the only things that if they can afford it, I try to get them to take like a multivitamin, because as you're losing all this, as you're peeing out all this extra water, you are taking vitamins and things along with it. So that's one thing that I would say, if you can afford it. Away from the weight cut, I think magnesium is one thing that should be used, right. Because a hell of a lot of people are depleted in it anyway, especially in the exercising population.
Yes.
You can't replace what you lose through sweat and exercise in the diet, or you can, but most people don't, because they don't know they're actually losing it in the first place.
I must admit, I've been chucking in like sesame seeds and all that kind of stuff to try and top that up a little bit.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, absolutely, definitely do that. But yeah, I mean, for most people, no. I mean, for strength athletes, creatine, that's probably the most researched supplement out there, and it does work. But again, if you're trying to make weight, creatine, you've got the potential for it to hold on to water as well. So
yes.
That's going to be something that you might want to avoid. And if you're using it in training and then you go ahead and deplete it all for your weight cut, then what's the point in using it anyway?
Right. Yeah.
That's my kind of view on that.
Yeah. Interesting. I've found that it can help. Do you find that some people are non-responders to creatine though?
I've heard about that, but I've not necessarily come across it myself. Because I mean, like I said, most of the people that I work with aren't looking for that ridiculous strength gain anyway. It's going to be it's only me and myself and a few other people that are into that kind of thing. Most people, it's just kind of a fat loss. But I definitely have heard of that, but I've come across it myself.
You talked about Jordan as well, as he's maturing, basically getting a bit naturally bigger, so putting on a bit more lean mass, I guess. And how he'd be fighting in weight categories and all the rest of it. How do you kind of handle that? Do you sort of help him decide when actually it's not a good idea to keep down so low, because now you're losing lean mass and your strength and power and your support as such to your frame? You're not going to be as robust, and when it's time to actually we're accepting you're not going to get at that weight now and move up.
I've tried to tell him this, but he won't have any of it. I mean, he's very, very reluctant to move up a weight. I think because he's had fights at sort of 59 kilos and a little bit. I don't think he said at 60 yet, but he's not keen on moving up, and I think he'll resist it for as long as possible. But I mean, you could see just from the shape of his body from before we started working together, and then without any weight training, just from giving him what his body needs, he looks shredded. He's got muscle. He's got shape. Before he was like a bit of a twig. No offense to him, but he's completely changed now. His body is just like he's looking a lot healthier. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and like I said, just without even thinking about or even trying, it just happens. Just because you're giving the body what it needs to recover properly. And yeah, so but like I said, I can't see him changing his mind anytime soon on his fight weight, but he'll have to do it sooner or later.
I think it's one of those things you have to find out the hard way. I've personally fought anything from, what was the lightest I fought at? It was 72 kilos through to about 84 kilos.
Yeah.
So I've played around with my weight quite a bit, and I know that when I was light, although you sort of perceive, I've got a weight advantage, I really didn't, because my training suffered as a result, because I was trying to keep my body weight down all the time.
Yeah.
And I wasn't robust. I was getting injuries.
Really?
I couldn't hold myself together. As soon as I put on a bit more weight, a bit more lean mass again, obviously not just fat, just some lean mass.
Yeah, sure.
I was structurally much better off and fought a lot better as well.
Did you feel more? Which sort of weight category did you feel more powerful at?
I feel best. I mean, it depends on. I was doing anything from fights with same day weighing or a day before weighing.
Yeah.
I find if I sit naturally around sort of 79 to 80 kilos typically. If I fight there, then if I'm walking around at that sort of weight, then I'm about right. If I'm walking around at about 75 kilos to cut down even lighter, then I'm not the right size for me.
Okay. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah.
And when I was heavier, too much of my training was actually hypertrophy, trying to keep muscle mass on, so that I was big enough to match those guys, and I naturally wasn't there either.
Sure.
So
I got that kind of natural set point where you was comfortable at. Yeah.
And I think everybody needs to find where that is. And as when you're younger, that set point's changing all the time, and there's a point where you've got to decide, actually, that set point now, I'm trying to distort myself too much.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
I've got to shift up and just make sure I'm the best I can be at that weight, and follow that trend. Yeah,
for sure. I think with Jordan, like, he'll make the weight for these fights, but if he went back to the UK for a couple of months and he got injured and he couldn't fight, and just without really tracking his diet, I mean, he's got an idea of what he needs to do from what he's been eating for the past couple of years, but he'll always sort of go back to around 65, 66.
Yeah.
And I think he can sit comfortably at around 63, but I don't think 6 kilos is quite a lot to lose in a week. And I think a fighter should, probably maybe be 3 or 4 kilos without having to really, really struggle to get down to that weight. I mean, I know you see, like for instance, Conor McGregor recently in the UFC, how much they lose to get to their weights, and that's up to them. That's what they do. But I don't know how much of a difference it makes on the performance in the actual fight.
I think it is an individual thing, isn't it? You've got to test it out and see how you feel.
Yeah.
Because some people don't cut much and they feel like crap, don't they? And others seem to get away with it.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would suffer if I had to do a weight cut, because I can't live without, with any kind of restriction of food. I get into such a terrible mood.
I've kind of looked at basically how much lean mass someone's got, and then done a rough calculation on what percentage of glycogen that would relate to them, the stored carbs and the water weight that's associated with that, and then how much they can safely dehydrate as well. I kind of, and I've ended up kind of blending the two of those and predicting for someone what sort of weight they could fight at, and then we try and do a test in training before they actually fight like that and see how they feel.
That's an interesting tactic, actually. How's that worked out so far?
Yeah, it's worked out really well. I've managed to kind of pretty accurately actually sort of estimate based on lean mass how much someone can deplete with running their carbs down. And then say with a percentage of their body weight dehydration as well, that's that they can handle really easily. I mean, I don't really like people to go beyond sort of 3% body weight dehydration. It depends on how they handle it, I think, really. But most people, I think, if you combine about 3% with running their glycogen stores down, then that's a really quite an easy weight cut, and they feel good for that.
Sure. So what technique do you use to calculate their lean mass? Is it, body fat calipers or?
Body fat calipers I find a bit all over the place depending on who's doing it.
You're pretty experienced with them, don't you?
Yeah. I've kind of looked at the research, and the bioimpedance scales tend to be just about as reliable, so I just stick with that. Bit of a finger in the air still, isn't it? Unless you're sort of doing a DEXA scan or something.
Yeah. Unless you've got one of those handy,
I'm really lucky, actually. There's one set up in my town here. So
is there really?
Yeah. I still haven't got round to going myself yet. But,
they're the one. Yeah, they're like the gold standard. You should set up sort of a partnership with them. You get like a discounted rate for the fighters to get in there and get it done properly.
I'll have to sort that out.
In the new year.
But it's something that's worked quite well, that actually. I mean, in terms of percentage dehydration, what sort of percentage do you find works quite well for people, or is it not something you kind of get what you get with the water loading?
I mean, like so far, what it's been all about is just helping them make the weight, and it's because when you're in Thailand, I don't really have the facilities to kind of guess what their what kind of percentage we're actually going to in dehydration. But I always get them to. They're always allowed to sort of hydrate with a sip of water here and there on the day, so it's not going to a point where they're going to be in any kind of suffering, so it's going to be always going to be to a point where what's needed, but they're also allowed to sort of wet the whistle, as it were.
Makes a big difference, doesn't it? Just feeling like your mouth's not so dry.
Just a tiny little mouthful.
Kind of going back to like the individual differences and sort of metabolic type and all the rest of it. Do you find there's much of a difference between what you do with the male fighters compared to the female fighters, and hormone balances and all the rest of it?
The female fighters, the only thing that I take into account is that time of the month, because generally they're going to be hold on to a little bit more water weight. They're going to be getting onto more carbohydrate cravings, so usually we kind of adjust that to lower their fat intake and increase the carbs for that week. But when it comes to the weight cut, I try and keep it as similar as possible. Because it can start to get quite complicated. As long as the fat's being kept high, then generally the hormonal health is going to be kept in check with that.
Right. So just to chuck a couple of other things at you then, other diets that fighters tend to experiment with, low carb diets in general. How do you feel about that?
For a fighter, it's just not possible. Because I mean, if they're going on a low carb diet, they're probably going to want to be losing. The reason for it is they're going to want to lose weight. So obviously, if you stop eating carbs, you will lose weight, because you will have, unless you've replaced it with something else, you're going to have lost a considerable amount of calories from that. Like we talked about earlier, the carbs, they get stored in your muscles and liver as glycogen. When for every bit of exercise or whatever you do that requires glycogen for use as energy, then you're going to be that's going to go along with the water weight. So you'll lose weight. But as soon as your muscles are depleted, your liver's depleted, everything's going to become a struggle. You're not going to be recovering properly. Training is going to become laborious. And I think carbs need to be, for a fighter, probably 40 to 50% of their diet to supplement that training.
Yeah.
And I think if someone is going to be going on a performance-based nutritional journey, that they need to be pushing their carbs as high as possible without gaining weight. So like we said earlier, setting your protein, setting your fat, and then every week maybe playing around with your carbs, pushing them up by 25 to 50 grams until you see a little bit of weight gain. Then you found your calorie ceiling. You're taking on as much as your body can tolerate without gaining weight.
Yeah.
And at the amount of training you're doing. So you want your carbs to be as high as possible, I think. I mean, at the end of the day, as long as you're getting a good performance out of it, it doesn't matter which way you skew your fat or carbs. As long as you've got enough fat for hormonal health, then you can have as much carbs as you want. People seem to be sort of really scared of, carbs make you gain weight, they make you insulin resistant. But it's not really something that most people need to be worrying about. And as long as you're within your calorie limit or at your calorie limit, you're not going to gain weight no matter what you do, just because of the simple energy balance.
Yeah, and I think when you're training hard, that all of that comes out of the wash a little bit, doesn't it? Because you're using that carbohydrate up.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. And there was nothing better than a big training session and then having like a very carb heavy dinner afterwards, is there really? I wouldn't want to deprive myself of that.
When it comes to carbohydrate, I definitely see that as a big relationship with the quality of your training. And if your training quality is going down, then you've gone too far with that.
Do you mean in terms if you're trying to lower your carbs?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I've experienced it. I think you'd be surprised at how much carbs you can tolerate and how much you need to fuel a really high intensity, high volume training session. The amount of times, when I was training Muay Thai in Thailand, I would just be like, can't be bothered, like not even looking forward to the training sessions. As soon as you start pushing your carbs up, it makes such a world of difference.
Yeah. I think it's more to do with the quality of the carbohydrates, isn't it, rather than the quantities?
Yeah, to a certain extent. Obviously, you need. There's no point in living off, chocolate bars for your carb sources, because it's not, like you said, it's not, the quality isn't going to be very good. But at the same time, I do also believe in a bit of flexibility within the diet. So for what a lot of people I will do is, rather than giving them a set targets throughout the week to hit, will cycle their carbs a bit around the training. So maybe if they identify their most intense training session to me, what we can do is take their total amount of carbs for the week, reduce them slightly over the 6 days, and then those extra carbs that you've gained from taking them from the 6 days, you can plonk it onto the 7th day. So let's say on a Saturday night, you want to have some low-fat ice cream after dinner, or you want some, bird's eye waffles or something like that. It's not the end of the world. If you want a bit of a treat once or twice a week, as long as you're within your targets, then it's not going to be an issue. And it gives you that kind of a psychological break, because I know for a fact that I can't last more than 7 days without having a bit of chocolate or ice cream or cake or something like that. Do you know? So, but as long as it's within my targets, it doesn't affect my training. And at the end of the day, like I said, it gives you that little break, something to look forward to at the weekend.
Yeah. In terms of kind of calories, whether it's sort of whether you round up your tallies so that they match your targets on a 24-hour basis, or by the end of the week, how do you kind of feel about that? Do you have to kind of make sure that your calories match your outputs for the 24-hour period, or can you sort of bank it a bit and it's the total for the week that really matters?
It could be, as long as it's, let's say for your goals, if you're wanting to put on weight, as long as you're in a calorie surplus at the end of the week, then you're going to still be on track. If you want to lose weight, as long as you're in a deficit over the course of a week, then you're still going to lose weight. So which is why, even if someone is looking to lose weight, they'll be in a deficit for 6 days, but then for the 7th day, that increase in calories, A, is going to offset negative hormonal impact from being in a calorie deficit.
Yeah.
It's going to give your body a break, as well as your mind a break from being in that deficit throughout the rest of the week.
Yeah.
But over the course of the week, you're still in a deficit, then it's not an issue.
Yes.
So there's always room to wiggle on the weekends or whenever.
That kind of leads me in as well to asking you about intermittent fasting and what you think about that, really.
I tend not to use it with many of my clients because I think they should be looking to just sort of try and improve without labeling. They should be trying to improve their diets without labeling it,
Yeah.
As soon as you label something like, oh, you're on paleo or you're doing intermittent fasting, you're doing carb backloading, then they immediately get on the internet and start looking up, and then they start forming their own ideas and things like that. So I think it's best to leave labels for diets out. But I think it does have its place, but not in a fighter.
Yeah.
Because by let's say you're doing the 16-8 where you have your feeding window from midday to 8 p.m. You're missing out on a lot of recovery time throughout in the morning. I just don't think it's a bit kind of indispensable for that reason.
Yeah, we've got a lot to recover from, haven't we?
Well, exactly, yeah. And I just, if weight loss is your goal, then there's other ways to do it without having to resort to that. It does have its benefits. You do get people that just don't enjoy breakfast. They just can't eat. They have no appetite in the morning. And for those people, then you can use that template to try and help them towards their goals.
Yeah.
Women, I don't think it should be useful because intermittent fasting can be stressful for the body if you're going extended periods of time without food. Women tend to be more higher stressed individuals anyway.
Yes.
So you can get negative impacts just by throwing that on top of them as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, for fighters, I don't see how it can work, especially if you're looking at training in Thailand twice a day. You just can't do it, can you? As soon as you finish that morning session, straight in the restaurant, get some food down you, and sleep until the afternoon.
It's all about the recovery.
Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah, nap time.
We kind of spoke about caffeine a little bit earlier, and obviously revving you up and that kind of thing. What about the effect of diet and mindset?
I think it varies from person to person. It varies between people, how badly they want to reach their goals or look a certain way aesthetically, or whatever it might be. So like I said, I think diet and mindset, you need to be prepared for it, and you need to have those mental breaks in there as well, which is why I do like the if it fits your macros approach. So like we talked about before, if you do want to have a couple of slices of pizza, you can put that into your let's call it a cheat day, and then you can work backwards and work the rest of your macros that are remaining around that for the rest of the day.
Right.
So you don't have to be, let's say, stuck on salmon and rice or chicken and broccoli or whatever the stereotypical thing is.
Yes.
So I think as long as you've got that, because there's nothing bleaker than thinking, this is all I've got to eat for X amount of months, because I know I can't do it, which is why I'm a fan of the other approach.
Yes.
Some people can do it, and some people will do what's necessary, but for a lot of people, as long as they've got flexibility in there, let's say if you're good 90% of the time, then there's room to wiggle 10% of the time. If you want something that isn't, let's just call it less than optimal, then it's not going to ruin anything. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's just a way to approach it with this the flexibility in the diet.
Yeah, make it suit everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no good being perfect if they're not actually going to do it.
I worked with, do you know Jake Lund? He's an Australian fighter.
Oh, yes.
I worked with him earlier in the year, and I talked about all this with him and the this carb cycling, and I was like, well, what do you want for your cheat meal? And he was like, I would really love some Cocoa Pops. And I was like, okay, so come to the Saturday night, and he's got this bowl of Cocoa Pops, and he can't believe that he's allowed to eat it. And it's just just absolutely Cocoa Pop heaven at the end of the day, and who's still losing weight at the same time.
We've all got something, haven't we?
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Just like a little, like for me, I personally have 2 cheat meals a week, and I have like 2 massive breaded chicken with potato waffles, baked beans, and spinach.
Nice.
Yeah, it's not ideal, but gives me that break, you know.
You need it.
Yeah.
Well, finally there, Sam, I mean, are there any sort of trusted sources that you have that you rely on that we could look at? For example, I quite like John Berardi and Precision Nutrition. Is there anyone that you kind of like, yeah, this is good information?
Yeah, have you heard of Don Heatrick?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, do you mean in terms of Muay Thai or anything?
For your nutrition, really, you know, because like you say, there's a lot of conflicting information, and I'm just wondering if there's places you kind of like
cut through the crap, as it were.
Yeah.
Ben Coomber, Body Type Nutrition. I can't recommend them highly enough. The team that they have, it's always like evolving. They've got people with different specialities. So there's just always tons of information. They've got like a Facebook page, etc. Richard Senewald, he was formerly a coach on Body Type Nutrition, but he's moved on to a project of his own. But he always puts out good information, very clear cut, no kind of agenda. Phil Lerney is another one, right. Very technical, more of like the kind of strength and conditioning kind of side, but just like a fountain of knowledge nonetheless. Who else have we got? Like you said, Precision Nutrition. John Berardi puts out loads. I think John Berardi, you know, for most of the population looking just to like lose a little bit of weight, that kind of information that he puts out there is really, really useful. For more the sciencey kind of side, I use a website called examine.com. Right. They basically put out tons of information on all of the supplements that you can think of, and they take all of the studies and research and just put it into layman's terms, so you can just basically understand, you know, what it is you're looking, if you're looking to buy something, what it is you're going to buy, and does it work, and things like that. Yeah. I think those are probably the main ones at the moment. Yeah. Brilliant. Well, thanks for those. Hang on a sec, you're breaking up there, mate. Can you hear me at all, Sam? It's not really coming through, mate. We'll have to wind it up there then. All I can do is say thank you very much for spending some time chatting with me, mate. Yeah, no worries, mate. We'll have to call it a day there if it's not coming through. That's right, yeah. Thank you very much. Okay, mate, good to speak to you. I'll message you in a bit. Cheers. Okay, cheers, bye-bye. The internet seems to have unceremoniously dumped us out, but you can get hold of Sam through the following email. So that's nutrition@sumaleeboxinggym.com, and he's on Facebook as SBG Nutrition and on Instagram as SBG Performance, and you can add him on Facebook as Sam Sumalee. I'll put links to all of that on my website, and it just leaves me really to thank Sam for his time and for sharing his experience with us of nutrition for fighters.